Hi, I'm Caden here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our recap for Week 13 of the 2024 NFL season. But before we jump into some of those bright games, just a quick couple of updates here on the news side of things. One update on a suspension side of things. Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shahir will be suspended for 3 games after laying a pretty vicious hit on Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. That looks like it'll take him out for at least the coming week, if not probably even further, because, man, it was a Tua-style concussion, to say the least. And then finally, a 1-2 combo of pain for the San Francisco 49ers as they place not only starting running back Christian McCaffrey on injury reserve, but also place backup running back John Mason on injury reserve. So now they are down to their third string running back, Isaac Guerrero, the rookie who has had a few opportunities this year and has definitely taken advantage of those opportunities. It is insane how that Kyle Shanahan offense and San Francisco offense can just make any running back look like a star. But man, they find a way to do it. So let's see if Isaac can step up big for them again as they make a final push at any playoff hope there in the NFC. But moving on to the games from last week before we start talking about the playoff picture of the future. Starting off with the Packers game, which was the Thanksgiving night game in which the Green Bay Packers hosted the Miami Dolphins and picked up a home win by a score of 30-17.
Yeah, and this was a really fast start by the Packers. It started out with help by a muff punt early in the first quarter by the Dolphins, which allowed the Packers to take it at the goal line, basically. So that was a nice start for them. And then it was another nice game by Jaden Reed, who didn't have a whole ton of yards, but had 2 touchdown receptions, which is huge because he had the first 2 to put us up 14-0. So nice game by him, and a nice game by Jordan Love, who had his second consecutive game without throwing an interception. So I really think he's turning the corner on those interceptions.
He needed to. It was getting like Brett Favre, almost Jameis Winston levels for a little bit there.
So another turnover-less game for Jordan Love, which is always good to see. And an okay game by the defense, which didn't have a ton of turnovers. They only had the 1 on special teams, but they did allow Tua to throw for 300 yards and allow for them to kind of get back into the game after being up 24-3 at halftime. So the Dolphins put up a good fight to make a run for the money, but it just wasn't enough as the Packers got too far ahead early on in the game, and it was too much for the Dolphins and Tua to overcome, even though he did have a nice game in that cold weather.
Yeah, I pretty much stopped watching this game at half. On a road trip home, I watched most of the first half and then just kind of scarcely caught the second half as I was getting ready for bed. But, I mean, I don't think I missed much in this game. The Dolphins did at one point have it within a 2-possession game, but that was the closest it got. And even then, it wasn't like really a 2-possession game. Like score-wise it was, but feel-wise, that game was already over even when it was only a 13-point differential. My big thing about this game, Callan already hit the nail on the head of the big ideas and kind of big players and winners I was going to talk about. But my main idea, my main takeaway from this game is it really looked like a passing-based Florida team went and played in 20-degree weather. I mean, that's exactly what it was. They just couldn't get the passing game going vertically. All the yards that Tua had was more like check down type stuff. Almost everything was within 10 to 20 yards. I think the longest throw in air he had was about 25 yards. So just when you're so vertical based like that and so big play based of an offense like the Dolphins are, when it's cold like that and you can't get the passing game going, and then you can't get the passing game going, so then because of that you can't get the running game going, it really, no pun intended, snowballed into just bad play for the Dolphins. So they really did their best. I don't think that the Dolphins are going downhill and have turned this corner of being a bad team all of a sudden. I think that they were just in a really bad situation and did the best of a bad situation, but couldn't do much more than that. So now moving on to the Vikings game, in which the Minnesota Vikings also played at home, but hosted the Arizona Cardinals, but also picked up a home win, but by a much closer score of 23-22. Now, I watched this whole game, of course, and to be honest, I think that this is one of the lesser games that the Vikings has played all year. I mean, I thought we looked really bad against some bad teams in the prior weeks, like the Jaguars game against Mac Jones and just last week against the Titans. I thought we looked bad, but good enough to keep winning and keep a score and beat these bad teams. But we looked terrible this game in the first half, and I thought that there was no chance because the Cardinals are a much better team than the Titans or the Jags or any of the other ones that we kind of snuck wins out against in the prior weeks. So I had pretty much all but given up this game by about halfway through the third quarter. I think when Marvin Harrison caught that touchdown, I was pretty much like, well, we lost. We tried our best, but we somehow turned it around. And I say somehow turned it around because, to be honest, other than that one really good scoring drive by Sam Darnold, and he did end up having 2 scoring drives, 2 touchdown drives, but other than that first drive, we still kind of looked sloppy. I mean, it never really looked like we were playing at 100%. But that being said, I always say this, I will never complain about a mark in the win column. I think that the fact that we were able to play this sloppy and still beat not a upper echelon team quite yet, but a really middle of the pack to good team in the Arizona Cardinals with that poor of play, I guess I can't really look at it in any way other than promising. I mean, it's a weird way to say that it's promising that we looked so bad, but when you look so bad and can still pull out a win against a pretty good team, I guess that's a win overall. I don't really know what else to say. This game kind of left me speechless, to be dead honest, but hey, a win is a win.
Yeah, and it was a tough win for the Vikings. It was a tough win for them to come back, and they were down at one point 19-6, I believe.
Yep.
Which is a very odd score, I thought.
But, so many field goals.
Yeah,
so
a lot of
field
goals to start, and then a couple of touchdowns late into the early into the second half, late into the fourth quarter, won by the Minnesota Vikings to put them up. Or did they kick the field goal to go up?
Field goal went up. No, touchdown went up. Touchdown went up. Touchdown and extra point. Yeah.
Yep, the extra point put them up by 1. So, and then it was really a bad game by Aaron Jones, who had 2 fumbles. He did have the game go-ahead touchdown catch or game-tying touchdown catch, followed by the subsequent extra point. But without those fumbles, this might have been a different game altogether. The Vikings may have blown past the Cardinals had Aaron Jones not fumbled twice. I believe it was in back drive.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because, I mean, they took him out in the first quarter, and he didn't play another snap until a little after halftime. So
yeah,
it must have been back-to-back, yeah.
Yeah, so those fumbles, they will get you off the field in a hurry if you can't hold on to the ball. But really, it was a good win for the Vikings, even though it was hard fought. It was really good showing by the Cardinals, who did everything they could to go in and upset the Vikings in Minnesota, which is a tough place to play. Kyler Murray did his best to navigate through that Brian Flores defense, and he did quite well for Kyler Murray standards when you think about his preparedness and his readiness in games. But he did pretty well for such a daunting task of figuring out that Brian Flores defense. And where another bright spot for the Cardinals was James Conner, who was not able to, I don't think he got a ton of yards.
I don't think he eclipsed 100 at least.
No, he did not, but he had another nice game, and he had a nice contract extension, 2-year extension rewarded this week too. So it was nice for him to get that extension and be another centerpiece for the Cardinals in the near future.
Yeah, when we left the Cardinals about a minute left and only needing a field goal, the way they had been not driving it into the end zone, because they did have trouble once they got in the red zone, but they were just absolutely marching us down the field to get into the red zone. So I thought we had absolutely zero chance even after we got that go-ahead touchdown. But the defense was able to step up, and I believe it was Stephon Gilmore, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Gilmore got hurt.
Oh, who got the game-sealing interception? Wasn't Murphy, because he got the first interception. Oh, gosh, totally blanking on it now. But on that drive, we kind
That's
of
right. He
it
threw a
was
pair.
it was more of a desperation heave on 4th down, but it was technically a game-sealing interception. So defense stepped up big time to secure the win for us. So now moving on to what we marked as a game of the week last week, we had the Philadelphia Eagles heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. And this time we have a road win with the Philadelphia Eagles picking up a win by a score of 24-19. And man, was this an entertaining game. And man, was this a ground and pound game. I mean, when you got two absolute freaks of nature like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry going against each other, and great offensive line like both the Eagles and Ravens have respectively, of course it's going to be a ground and pound game. I mean, what else do you expect? This game went so fast, really, because there was a good amount of scoring, but not a ton of scoring, like super high points. And there was the clock running constantly because there was so many rushes. So it was kind of funny to see that. It was like a true old school game of football. But nonetheless, not only on the ground were they able to get it done, the Eagles, this being, they actually did do it a little bit through the air as well. They got some great completions to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who both seem to be kind of up and running again after they both went through some injuries. But nonetheless, it was just too much for the Ravens to take overall. The Ravens stayed in the game, and actually they really should have won the game because Justin Tucker left. So it'd be 7 total points on the board with 2 missed field goals and a missed extra point. So, I mean, when you lose by 5 points and you have one of the, or I said have, but I guess at this point it might even be had one of the best kickers in the league, because I guess he's not really the best kicker in the league anymore with the performances he's put up this year. But nonetheless, when you lose by 5 points and your really good all-pro kicker leaves 7 points on the field, pretty easy math there. You really should have won that game. You should have left with a home win right there. But nonetheless, because of those misses and Philadelphia taking advantage of their opportunities when those misses came to fruition, they're able to pick up a really big statement win there in Baltimore.
Yeah, it was a really nice win for the Eagles, who pull off the upset in Baltimore, where even though they have the better record, they were actually the underdog in this game. So that was very interesting to see the underdog in this game come out on top. Another great game by Saquon Barkley, who went over 100 yards rushing and another rushing touchdown. So he continues to put up MVP caliber numbers, and we'll have to see if his MVP race is able to continue with another stellar performance next week, because he is really getting to be mentioned in that MVP conversation. And it was another nice game by Cooper DeJean, who had a standout tackle on Derrick Henry, where he literally picked him up and laid him out. So it was nice to see Cooper DeJean, a former Hawkeye, get a nice big play and really put some fear in that Baltimore Ravens running attack.
After the game, they even interviewed Cooper DeJean, and he was like talking about how even he was surprised when he made the tackle and kind of stuck up Derrick Henry like he did. And he even said that it kind of hurt him more than anything. He's a big guy, and I was like, yeah, I bet. I bet it felt like you ran into and tackled a brick wall, to be honest. And that's pretty much what he did at the end of the day. So really good stuff by Cooper DeJean there. Love to see it, as Callan mentioned, with the former Hawkeye. So now moving on to our picked game of the week, starting with Callan's pick for game of the week. We have the Seattle Seahawks heading to New York to take on the Jets in a coast-to-coast battle. And the Seahawks go coast-to-coast and pick up a road win by a score of 26-21.
Yeah, and this was looking to be an early stellar performance by Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, where they went up with 2 touchdowns right away early on, 14-0. But the Seahawks were able to come back and make it a game, and were able to steal it late in the fourth quarter by outscoring the Jets 10-0 in the fourth quarter after being down 16-21. So another tough loss for the Jets, who really, this is another bad season for them. They continue to just find ways to lose, and if not for other teams, I don't know how the Jets aren't talked about as the biggest disappointment in the league this year. If not for teams like the Cowboys and the Bears, who continue to find other ways to lose, the Jets just find different ways to lose. They let the defense let the Seahawks score 10 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. led by Geno Smith and Kenneth Walker, who was able to drive downfield and go ahead in this game. And then Aaron Rodgers had the chance to pull some fourth quarter magic, but I think that all the magic that Aaron Rodgers had is left because he just didn't have it anymore, and he wasn't able to bring the Jets back.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets, like you mentioned, storm out to that 14-point lead behind not one, but I think two different fumbled kickoffs, if I'm not mistaken. I know at least one.
Yeah.
They had two fumble recoveries, and I know at least one was a kickoff. I think they both might have been fumbled kickoffs by the Seahawks.
Laviska Shenault.
And then even on the other side of the kickoff things, Kene Nwangwu, the former Vikings, had a kickoff return for a touchdown for the Jets, which was part of their 14 points, or maybe even that 7 points that they scored in the second quarter.
21.
But nonetheless, just insane special teams play by the New York Jets. But when the special teams plays that good, the offense and defense have to step up with them, and that most definitely did not happen here.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets did get out to that 14-0 lead, but the Seahawks were able to absolutely turn the momentum with a 92-yard touchdown return by Leonard Williams. The big boy dropped back in coverage and was able to cut off an Aaron Rodgers under route. And then in the slowest, most rumbling, bumbling return we've seen this year, he took it all the way back, which the receivers and running backs must have gave up. Like, how did nobody catch this guy running down the sideline? But nonetheless, he did somehow make it all the way down the sideline to get the touchdown. And pretty much from that point on, it was just Seahawks. I mean, the Jets gave a fight, like Callan said. Because of that lead, they were able to stay in the game the whole time and had a chance at the end of it. But once that happened and the Seahawks put up that 16 unanswered in the second quarter, it was just a whole different game, and you could kind of tell the tide was turning and wasn't really going to turn back in favor of the Jets anytime soon. So the Seahawks continued to roll with that momentum and picked up a huge win to keep them in great playoff standings in the top of the NFC North, or NFC West rather. So now finally, to finish things off for this episode with my game of the week, we have an NFC North battle. Got a little bit ahead of myself right there. But we had the first Thanksgiving game of the Chicago Bears heading to Detroit to take on the Lions. And the Lions eke out a home win by a score of 23-20. And when I say they eked it out, I mean they eked it out of pure stupidity and confusion by the Chicago Bears, Matt Eberflus, and that offense as a whole. I mean, if you want to talk about that situation, I won't go too deep into it because I'm sure you've heard about it by now or watched it happen live and are just as confused as pretty much everybody else watching it exactly what the Bears were thinking or what they were going for. But pretty much they had the ball in field goal range with, I think, approximately 40 seconds left, maybe a little less, and then followed that 40 seconds up with a sack, not taking a timeout on third down, and then throwing up an absolute just confusing play on fourth down.
To the middle of the field.
To the middle of the field that ended up being incomplete, but it was such a long pass for no reason that it took so much time off the board, and Caleb Williams took so much time to snap the ball that they literally ran out of clock. And I mean, as I say that, you probably think, well, if you didn't watch it, you probably think, oh, well, they didn't have a timeout. They just panicked. No, that's the worst part about it. They had a timeout in their pocket. So just, I mean, the Lions played great this game. And actually, to be honest, the Bears played just as good. They were in field goal range. They had the game-tying field goal. They were inside a 50-yarder, which Cairo Santos is very reliable inside of 50 yards when he's not getting his field goals blocked. But that's a different story. But he's very reliable inside of 50 yards. So they were going to send this into overtime, and they had the momentum. They had the ghost of the Vikings last week that they were fighting against. I think they really could have won this thing in overtime, but we never got to figure out if that happened because of the just mind-numbingness of what the Bears did to finish the game.
Yeah, it was. I had to go back and watch it and I don't go back and watch many games. I had to go back and watch the end of this game because I had to figure out what the hell happened. Because I've never seen a game end where the clock literally runs out on you with a timeout. You at least call the timeout and give yourself a field goal chance. Now, what I was hearing is that what happened is that the Matt Eberflus play call going into the headset of Caleb Williams was so long that that's what the delay was at the line of scrimmage, is that he was getting the play call still. And then so Caleb Williams actually realizes he's running out of time and changed the play. So it extended that even further as he then changes the play because he cut off Eberflus to be like, hey, we got to go. But he probably should have called the timeout. I mean, Caleb Williams, as the quarterback on the field, has that power to call the timeout. Now, did he have the power to overrule the coach? Maybe he was banking on the coach calling a timeout, but I've always seen the quarterback be able to call a timeout when the situation calls for it. So it was very bizarre. I've never seen a game end like this, and unless the Bears do it again, I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah, that's true. The team most likely to do again would be the Bears. But I mean, you have, even after they took that sack, you have like a good amount of time left. I think it was like 35 seconds, something along those areas. Seconds. You take your timeout, you decide what your next play is going to be. Give yourself a chance. Even if you just throw something like an out route and it's just you throw it where it's either a completion or out of bounds. Just don't risk an interception. Makes complete sense. Put Cairo Santos up to probably would have been, I can't remember exact yardage, but my guess would be like a 50 to 5-yard field goal.
A makeable
field
goal.
But give yourself the chance for the field goal. I know you're probably kind of like seeing ghosts, haunted a little bit by the last 2 times you tried a field goal at the end of the game and it got blocked or missed or however, but it's just so mind-numbing the way they did it. That's kind of the best way. I said it twice, but that's kind of the best way to describe it. It's just absolutely mind-numbing because it was just insane. And we forgot to mention it during the news section, but it, of course, led to Matt Eberflus being fired. So
yep.
you get what you give, I guess, is kind of the moral of the story with the Bears.
The clock ran out on old Eberflus.
The clock ran out on him. Yeah, there you go. So that was our NFL Week 13 recap episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and make sure you stay tuned in until tomorrow for our Week 14 predictions. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.